Welcome. This is Lance with Brandow Consulting, your Fishbowl Inventory experts. Today we're going to take a look at user rights. User rights are found under the Setup category. We'll click there and you'll notice we have two screens that apply to user rights. Fishbowl is set up similar to QuickBooks in this case. The rights are assigned to the user group, or you could also call a user group a role. And then the users, the Fishbowl users, are assigned one or multiple roles. So let's start out with the user group and take a look at the roles. On the left-hand side, you'll see a list of standard roles that Fishbowl assigns. I'm going to take a look at the accounting role. Double-click on that, and you'll see that available users are on the left, members on the right. I'm going to click on the Rights tab to show you what rights this role has. And we see a list of all the screens Fishbowl has. If I click on Expand All, it will show me the breakdown of the rights available to assign on each screen. The top one is Sales Point. I don't have any rights to the accountant for Sales Point. Sales Point is a POS module, not really an accountant's role. And then for the rest of the screens, I've given the accountant view rights at minimum. And then anywhere I see an accountant related screen, I give the accountant full rights. So they've got full rights to tax rates, full rights to home. Let's scroll down further. They have view rights to bills of material. And of course, every company is different. I'll make a recommendation here in a minute. I have a strong opinion on one of the screens, but most of the screens are your best judgment for what you feel your accountant's role will be in your company. Now, of course, with smaller companies, many people have multiple roles, and the way to handle that is to assign them to multiple roles, and we'll show you that in a minute. Okay, the company screen, I think I'd prefer to give the accountant full rights to the company screen. Let's keep going down here. Property, no, that's more of an admin role. Discount, it's more of a VP of sales role. UPS ready, that's a warehouse role. Now on the receiving screen is where I have my opinion. The accountant has the job of entering the vendor invoice. So after you send a purchase order to the vendor, they'll send you inventory, you'll receive the inventory, and then you'll receive an invoice from the vendor. And it's the accountant's role to manage AP. This is a surprising fact for most companies, starting with Fishbowl, is your accountant will actually be entering vendor invoices on the receiving screen in Fishbowl. And the task that they'll be performing, Fishbowl calls reconciling, just because you're reconciling the vendor invoice with what was received. So that's an accountant's task there. Now, I have fulfillment unchecked. Fulfillment, I feel, is a dangerous task to give anyone. I would uncheck the fulfillment box for everyone, because what fulfillment does is it gives someone the ability to make a mistake, and that is receive everything and reconcile everything all at once, which for some companies that may happen. So you may be the exception, but for most companies those two roles are split in two. One person in the warehouse physically counts the inventory and has the role of recording what was received, and another person works in the office and doesn't see what's going on in the warehouse. Their job is to record the email or the paper that came in and reconcile the vendor invoice. Reject, that's a warehouse role. Receive, that's a warehouse role. And under the receiving role or warehouse role, you would give them rights to receive, but not rights to reconcile or fulfill. And the receiver most likely won't have rights to view cost unless that's applicable for your company. So that's where my strongest opinion lies here on the receiving screen. It's one screen, but two very different roles use that same screen. Okay, so moving down, the schedule screen has an accounting aspect because you can schedule and export to QuickBooks if you turn on that feature under the module options on that screen. Dropbox, currency, that's an accounting role. Vendor, I give the accountant all rights to vendor. Then we scroll down, and basically what you'll do when you're assigning rights to the role is you'll go down through each screen and give the role the rights you feel is appropriate for that role. Then of course down here the accountant I think should have full rights to the accounting screen, and then we look at other things. So most people, this is what I see most people doing, is they start at the user screen. If we go here to user, they start at the user screen and they say, well, Chris is in accounting and he's in receiving, he does this and that, let's give him rights to those. But really, where we find out what the rights truly are is back on this screen under the user groups, which you could call user roles or roles. So we'll go ahead and save that. But then let's also take a look at, we can't forget the report rights. The next tab over is report rights. So these are the reports that this role is going to have access to. We just looked at the screens that the role will have access to. Now we want to see the reports that this role will have access to. And frankly, in my opinion, I think the accountant should have rights to view all the reports. But the receiving role may not be the type of role we want to have access to sensitive accounting information, like the inventory valuation summary report that shows everything that's in the warehouse and the value of each item and the total value of all your items in the warehouse. Usually the guy that's doing shipping and receiving doesn't necessarily need to know all that, and that might not be true for your company, but for most companies that's the case. So there's the report rights and the screen rights, and the rights are assigned to the role. Then back here on user, the user is the role is assigned to the user. So it looks like Dave has a lot of rights. We could say Dave's a sales guy and he only needs rights to sales, right? And if he does receiving sometimes, if he's the backup for receiving, then we may give him receiving. So thanks for joining us today. Once again, this is Lance at Brandow Consulting. We're your Fishbowl Inventory experts.